Care to warm up? He motioned with his hand but kept his eyes averted, trained on the river, a practical offer. The awkward intimacy would be epiphenomenal. The voice of reason cautioning her that this was one horrible idea didn't stand a chance against the categorical imperative of survival, so Vera scooted closer, and then closer still, until her back was against the Dunmer's chest. He brought his legs up, his thighs bracketing her hips, and then he leaned forward, bringing his arms around her and clasping his hands loosely over his knees. He was going to painstaking lengths, not to make more contact than strictly necessary. They sat in uncomfortable silence for a few moments. "Day!" Vera tried to muffle the sigh of pleasure at the blissful warmth, mostly out of sympathy for Demon Chop's visible discomfort. Every line of his body was as tense as a drawn bow. Once her back began to dry, a ragged sigh escaped her lips, and the Dunmer went very still, his own breath hitching before he covered it with a cough. Did Unnar make it? The last she saw of the Nord was his spectacular and ill-fated return to consciousness, damaged but alive, not by his efforts. But who am I to judge? You'll find that our employer is remarkably difficult to kill. Did you get the sword at least? We did. At that. I do hope it was worth it. The lazy drawl was back. I doubt it was. Vera wiggled closer, trying to get her legs dry now that her back was toasty. Ciro grumbled an inarticulate curse. Unless you'd like the flame cloak to incinerate you, I recommend you keep still. She stifled a snort and allowed herself to sag against him, the exhaustion washing over her like a tide. Oh, relax, will you? He was practically thrumming with tension. I've seen this countless times. It'll pass if you wait it out. You can't argue with your lizard brain, so don't waste the effort. I beg your pardon? Demon Chop sounded distinctly acerbic. Shit. And now, she had managed to offend him. So much for talking straight and making this less awkward. Something about lizards and dark elves. She'd read about it, but the effort of dredging up that particular historical tidbit felt insurmountable at the moment. She was warm, finally, and her eyelids suddenly felt full of sand. Let me rephrase. Well, she mulled it over. Surely this wasn't his first rodeo either. The arousal. Fight or flight or fuck. The 3FS. Judging by the state of your face, you narrowly survived something pretty unpleasant. Your body is going to cycle through instinctive responses depending on what's available. She rubbed her eyes. It passes, as I'm sure you know. For a few seconds, she thought he'd bolt, or tumble down the denial path and make things even more awkward between them. Without armor, you couldn't exactly argue with biological symptoms without sounding like a bigoted fool. But the Dunmer didn't argue. Instead, he exhaled through his teeth, his breath ruffling Vera's hair, and some of the tension drained from him. She felt him shrug. Spoken from experience, I take it? His usual irony was there, but also genuine curiosity. As I said, she stifled a yawn. Pretty normal response. Just your body reminding you that you're still alive. Consider my memory suitably jolted then. That being said. He hesitated. If we are to work together, I am not in the habit of mixing business and pleasure. It would have been convincing, too, if his arms around her hadn't tightened, his forearm brushing against the underside of her breasts. Fuck. Vera's mouth went dry. The sweet, achy heat pooling in her lower belly had very little to do with the fire cloak magic, or whatever it was called. Hard to miss the not very subtle irony, considering her earlier lecture about the naturalness of this very response. Or maybe it really was time to get a lover. Someone not overly complicated, without the baggage of a demented Nord employer with suicidal tendencies. Preferably someone with the added benefits of lending protection against Markarth politics. Wasa. A practical arrangement, 2 pigeons, 1 stone and all that. This, whatever it was not going to be practical in the slightest. Just business works for me, partner. Ciro chuckled a little darkly, but he didn't let go. Instead, he leaned forward, his lips inches from her ear. Warm enough yet? Oh, fuck. The blasted Dunmer certainly knew how to weaponize his voice when he felt like it. Vera shook her head, chuckling despite herself. So that's how it's gonna be. Wine. Let's pretend you won this round. Did I? Beneath the sarcasm, a hidden edge, like a blade tucked into the cuff of a boot. Whoop, not practical at all. Warm enough. Let's see where we landed. Ciro allowed for the spell to wane to mildly warm, then to barely tepid, then, finally, to nothing at all. He still radiated heat. Not the magical variety, just the regular difference in base body temperature. And it made Vera all the more reluctant to disentangle herself from her otherwise comfortable seating arrangement. Now that the more immediate threat of hypothermia was temporarily averted, the aftermath of her tumble in the river was beginning to catch up with her. Her ribs ached. The skin on her stomach, where she had scraped against the underwater rocks, was starting to smart, and the spot on her calf where something had hit her on the way to the dinghy throbbed like an electrical burn. An assortment of miscellaneous bruises and pulled muscles collected less memorably was also making itself known. The Dunmer didn't seem in any particular hurry to let go of her. She cast a glance to the skies. Another hour to sunrise. Where were they exactly? There was that telltale dip in the cliffs across the river. A sharp drop in the shape of a W, but lopsided on the right, which meant that they were most likely a bit north of Blind Cliff Cave. It was pure luck that they hadn't gone over the rapids. Where is Unnar, by the way? If Ciro had gone fishing for her, the Nord must have been functional enough when the boat reached shore to get himself to safety, sleeping it off on the bedroll just. He motioned with his head. Up there. He'll be good as new. The fetcher, give it a few hours. No need to fret about your betrothed. He shifted, settling in for the long haul. We might as well kill time until sunrise. Not much we can do until then, anyway. Vera snorted. Pragmatic, aren't you? He shrugged. Much as I wouldn't mind watching you run around half naked, I'd rather not keep wasting energy on the fire cloak to keep you from freezing. You won't be very effective until I have enough magic to dry out your armor. Vera leaned back against him and craned her neck, trying to get a look at his expression. One red eye met her gaze. The other one had shut completely with the swelling. His earlier tension was gone, and he seemed more relaxed, perhaps not outright comfortable, but too exhausted and battered to bother with sudden movements or with his usual vaguely threatening take on flirtation. She took inventory of his injuries. Large hematoma with severe edema over the left eye. He'll be lucky if the cheekbone wasn't fractured. Busted lip. 3 gashes on the right side of his face that looked like claw marks, shallow but ragged. The bottom one was oozing, a long, narrow burn over the left temple. Further down, a mottling of bruises that disappeared under the collar of his shirt. No open wounds. Interestingly enough, at least none that she could see. Either he had used some of his magic to heal himself, or how exactly did you manage to escape the Forsworn? They couldn't have possibly attacked them head-on and prevailed. Besides, the Dunmer's injuries weren't consistent with battle. She swallowed. Nope, torture was more like it. He shifted, prodded at his lower lip, made a face, and returned his hand to where it was resting before. His fingers clasped together over his knees, his arms in a loose embrace around her ribcage. How do you think? I think you tricked them somehow. That's how I would have gone about it anyway, if I was stupid enough to try that kind of stunt. What started as a chuckle ended with a none too flattering invocation of Shiagora's beard as the Dunmer's less than optimal physical state protested his amusement. I'm beginning to see a pattern of avoiding stupid stunts. Want to tell me where you're really from, Outlander? while we have some time on our hands. Vera forced herself to remain still, overriding the instinct to bolt. My friends call me Vera, or V. Either way, shorter than Outlander, saves time, that sort of thing. Oh, is that what we are? He didn't move, but his tone reacquired its mocking edge. Friends, damn it. It really was the voice, wasn't it? Partners, if you prefer. Until we can get ourselves back to Markarth, I'm stuck with you two. Safety in numbers, you know how it goes. If it's safety you're looking for, you've made a poor choice of associates, V. He sounded it out, trying it for taste. Or whoever you really are. In the myriad of possible questions, Vera decided to opt for the most obvious one. If Demon Chops kept bringing it up, the chances of him just dropping the topic in the future seemed slim to none, so damage control might as well be done now when his defenses were lowered. What makes you think I'm not who I say I am? He kept quiet for a moment, perhaps organizing his thoughts, or perhaps just relishing the drawn-out silence. A fellow with a healthy enjoyment of pregnant pauses. As far as Vera was concerned, there were worse vices. You are new to Markarth, with no allies or wealth to help keep you afloat. So much so that you agreed to take a dubious job for the promise of coin. Not that much coin either, if we're being truthful. From what I've seen of you so far, you move through the city like you do through the wilds. And you might look like a Breton to Unnar, but only because he's stuck on size. Breathe. You're fine. He's not your enemy at the moment. Pick your battles. The lizard brain really wasn't very receptive to arguments. How do I move? He made a vague noise, something between a chortle and You don't turn your back on a room. The first thing you do when you enter a closed space is to look for the exits. You eat like Oblivion itself is about to swallow your dinner. He punctuated his enumeration with little taps of his thumb against his wrist. From what I've seen of Markarth fashion, you keep your hair too short. Vera snorted in irritation. Saro, I don't think we know each other well enough for you to complain about the length of my hair. Another one of those non-committal chuckles. I don't recall complaining. My point is that this... He brought his hand up slowly, palm open. No weapons, no threat there, and rested it against the back of her head. And then he curled his fingers through the short, cropped strands and gave a tug firm enough to send a tingle down her spine. Couldn't be used against you, not unless someone got close enough. Or another very pointed chuckle this time as he removed his hand. If you allowed it. Vera repressed a whole body shudder. Oh, but the guy was trouble. Instead, she made herself shrug, ignoring the tingling and the memory of his hand in her hair and that just so yank. It's practical, easier to clean. Try elbowing your way through the Markarth public baths next time you're in town. Are you offering a guided tour? Ah, this game again. Oh, I'm sure Unnar can wash your back when he wakes up. Or is that not part of your business arrangement? The Dunmer barked a laugh, dry and gravely, and then muttered an owl followed by a few choice words, but kept cackling despite the discomfort. It isn't. Are you asking whether the position is open? Vera smirked. They'd already established the terms. From there, verbiage was fair game. And he'd been on the offensive so far, so turnabout and all that. Only if it's a very industrial scrubbing. Wouldn't want to mix business and pleasure, yeah? Then again, one does need a partner to get to the hard-to-reach places. She felt him shift behind her, the muscles in his forearms cording with the strain of consciously breathing through the tension. Gotcha, fucker. Two can play this game. Not my first rodeo either. Since you're curious about Markarth customs, they do have this great thing. They do with juniper oil. Used to be dwarven oil. Until Bothala finally got folks to realize it's toxic. If you can afford it, which I'm guessing you can, what with looting your way through the countryside. It's... Vera moaned, throaty and low and dark with promise, and then she bit the inside of her cheek to suppress a snort when demon chops hissed and scooted backwards, putting distance between them. There's another one that uses honey. Something about the mountainous environment, I think. Sharp on the tongue at first, almost salty, but if you take it in, the sweetness hits the back of your throat. Would you rather hear about that one? He spat out something in Dunmary, wiped his hands on his knees before bringing them back around, apparently utterly unwilling to concede so much as an inch. Azura's wisdom, woman. Enough. He swallowed audibly. His brogue got thicker when he was flustered. Good to know, for future reference, if this was going to be some kind of partnership. However temporary and however misbegotten, she might as well learn his tells. We'll pretend this round goes to you, shall we? I don't think so. I won this one fair and square. We're still talking about hair remedies, right? He sat in silence for a moment, and then he laughed, an unguarded, self-deprecating guffaw that made their little game feel so much less game-like. He leaned forward, his chest flush against her back, but his arms around her remained purposefully loose. Impressive, evasive tactics while we're on the subject. The cloak of irony was now firmly wrapped around his words. Will we be playing a guessing game then? If so, I have another puzzle I'd like to unravel. Based on your reaction to me during our first meeting, you've not only never seen a Dunmer, you've barely heard of us. That's not. Yes, filthy gray skin and what have you. Not very inventive, if you ask me. Don't get me wrong. Dunmer aren't much better when it comes to... He made a vague motion with his hand. The lesser races and all that hogwash. Bitter bunch. Your look of puzzled horror, though, it wasn't that. If you want to tell me I'm wrong, I'm all ears. At her lack of response, he nodded against her hair, satisfied. Thought so. Aside from that, the Thalmor, soulless bastards that they are, frighten you half to death. Oh, you hide it well? I certainly don't mean to suggest that your playing along with Unnar's marriage proposal wasn't entertaining to watch, but I don't believe you're too concerned with counting divines and coming up short. Clever bastard. Vera maneuvered herself to a sideways sitting position so she could catch his expressions better. If I tell you, will you tell me what your deal is with Unnar? I don't think you're just in it for the money. What makes you think I'm not? Vera nestled closer and leaned her head against his shoulder. He tensed, but let it go. Let's see. First, she waved her thumb. You stand watch and grin and bear it while your employer entertains himself with the local help, but you don't partake yourself. Based on how you dealt with that, it's not the first time either. She unfolded her index. 2. You don't eat when he does. You drink, out of pocket I'm guessing, but you don't share his meals, not even when we were traveling together. You wait for him to finish before you eat, or you take your meals elsewhere. In fact, you ate with me more often than with Unnar. She let her remaining fingers do the listing. 3. You weren't exactly enthusiastic when your Nord was trying to hire me, but since you dropped the cynical arsehole routine when he's out of earshot, I'm guessing Greedy Merce is more of a professional persona. Either way, you didn't want me to take the job. She felt the Dumner's chest rise in a nascent protest, but she waved it away. Don't bullshit, Ciro. I know how this game is played. 4. You took a beating. You have no open wounds. You're bruised and scratched and burned, but it wasn't from any skirmish. She examined him critically. A reddish swelling on his collarbone caught her eye. There. This one. You got more recently, and through armor, I'm guessing. Probably when you were making a run for it. But these ones are a bit older and delivered directly. He said nothing. Instead, he gazed out at the river. His face shuddered behind a neutral mask. It made his injuries look all the more stark. What did Unnar make you do? She pressed. He made an odd sound at the back of his throat, somewhere between a sigh and a growl. Nothing that he doesn't pay me for. Terse, with something crucial sieved out. He pays well, if you're wondering. Very well, in fact. That's utter bullshit. She softened it with a chuckle and brought her hand up, her thumb brushing his lower lip, careful not to reopen the scab. He winced, but didn't move away. I don't doubt he's a man of means. Still bullshit. Let's take this part, for example. You didn't collect that busted lip during battle. You would have worn your helmet. No, you had your helmet off and... She squinted, letting her fingers trail along his lip to his swollen cheekbone, her touch feather light. He didn't flinch. Yeah, I'd bet the money Unnar owes me that this isn't from a weapon. An armored fist, I'd guess, or the bone would have been broken. Expert on injuries, are you? Are you perchance a healer as well? 'Cause that would be useful. Unnar really found himself a little treasure, didn't he? Vera frowned, bitter rancor, plastered over sublimated rage hidden well. An old emotion, by the sound of it. Fuck off, Ciri. I've been around the block enough times to know what this looks like. You sat there while those forsworn rearranged your face. Tell me I'm wrong. He huffed a humorless laugh, painstakingly avoiding eye contact, but his shoulders relaxed. Around the block? Curious turn of phrase. Shit. Watch your words, you fuckwit. The Dunmer exploited the brief pause. My turn, I believe? He unclasped his fingers and brought his hand to her ribs, his palm shockingly hot against her skin. Vera froze like a rat caught in floodlights. Not much she could do about the goosebumps, damn it. He traced the line of her waist, slowly, as if counting every rib, and then relocated his hand to her leg, giving it an exploratory squeeze, his fingers prodding the muscles. Until he found the cluster of nerve endings high on her inner thigh and pressed his thumb into it, a sharp jolt, just shy of painful. Vera jerked, but the Dunmer held her in place, his arm around her tight as a vice. Shh. His breath tickled her ear. He rubbed slow, soothing circles over the pressure point. Or really, the pressure area might have been more accurate. Oh, bloody hell. The achy tug in her lower belly bloomed with a vengeance, spreading south. She wondered idly what expressions he wore when he fucked. It'll pass if you wait it out. It took a conscious effort not to shift to bring his hand just a little higher and to the left, and, sodding lizard brain, the Dunmer chuckled, sounding pleased with his exploration, and moved his hand away. On a Breton, the trigger point would be lower. I'd wager you're small, because food was scarce. So, back to my question. Where are you from, Outlander? Expert on Breton anatomy, are you? He shrugged. Tricks of the trade. I do, in fact, kill people for a living, V. And this round goes to me, I believe. Oh, fucking trouble. Walking, talking trouble. If I said far away, would you drop it? Not likely. You tell me about what your deal with Unnar is, Ciri, and I'll tell you where I'm from. He hummed in amusement. That wasn't our arrangement as I recall. Changing the terms already? No wonder Unnar took a shine to you. An odd bitterness under the challenge, all of it flowing over a deep riverbed of resignation. And you might as well use Teldrin. It's what my associates seem to prefer. Fair enough. Teldrin. She tried it for size, rolling it around. Shorter than demon chops anyway. Excuse me? What? It suits you. He rattled another one of his gravely laughs. I see. Got one for Unnar yet? It was Vera's turn to shrug. Mad Nord, but I'm still working on it. What's yours for him? Nothing. I'd repeat in polite company. Vera made a rude noise. If you're looking for polite company, you've made a shitty choice of associates. Teldrin. He mused, thoughtful. Careful now. A filthy mouth can invite complications. Vera laughed. As long as it comes with a nimble tongue to resolve them. He growled something indistinguishable, but didn't bother shifting out of the way this time. Let's call this one a draw. Vera smirked. Oh, but you're wound like a spring, aren't you? Think again. She shifted her hips against him. The Dunmer inhaled sharply and clasped his interlaced fingers tighter, knuckles paling to an ashen gray with the effort of holding himself still. Curse it. Fine. Don't be a sore loser now. How about a deal? You seem to like those. That dangerous note had crept back in, the lazy drawl forgotten. We play to 100. If you lose, you tell me where you're really from. The entire story, none of that. I'm just a Breton, trying to live my life rubbish you've been pulling. Vera looked up to gauge whether his expression matched his tone. The mask of sardonic humor was gone from him entirely. In its place, that odd banked rage again, old as the hills. Careful, dumbass. He's not all canned peaches and sugar cubes. Stop playing with knives or you'll end up missing a finger. She cocked an eyebrow and aimed her voice at conciliatory. Want to tell me what got your underpants in a tizzy, demon chops? She managed to startle him into a reluctant, "Heh." But that strange anger still lurked, right under the surface. If you think Unnar is leaving Markarth anytime soon, I suggest you think again. He'll stick to it like a burr to a mutt until he gets everything he came for. If he can use you, he will. And I have a feeling you're in no position to walk away from the coin, so I'm as stuck with you as you are with me, partner. He inhaled and let go, something uncoiling in him until his shoulders relaxed. He rubbed at his temple, the one with the burn, and cursed softly. You pass yourself off as a Breton, but you're as feral as an Ashlander. So I'd rather know whether I should expect an arrow in my back when I'm not looking. Vera narrowed her eyes, but then she nodded. Yeah, a knife in the back. If it didn't kill you, never healed right. 100. If you lose, you'll tell me what the deal is with Unnar. No more garbage about he pays me well. I want to know why you act like you're bound into his service. He turned to the river, his face in stark profile against the paling skies. Fair's fair, I suppose. What happens if we don't make it to 100? Whoever gives in first loses all their points. He didn't miss a beat. Been thinking the same thing, apparently. That's a bit vague. What counts as giving in? Want me to draw you a picture, Outlander? I've seen your map, Ciri. I shudder to think what you might do with that sort of diagram. Another one of his short, gravely cackles. Yours, on the other hand, are precise. Want to draw me a picture instead? I'll make you a nice legend, too, in case you get confused. With arrows, and X marks the spot, and everything. This time he guffawed outright. What's the score so far? Let's see. You won the first one, but I conceded too fast now that I think about it, and I got you with the second. You did not. Want me to tell you about honey some more? Oh. He took a breath. That. One each. You got me with the pressure point. He hummed, apparently in appreciative memory. I did. But you lost the polite company one. Your pattern's showing, by the way. He narrowed his one good eye. Is that what you call it where you come from? No. You want the technical term? She licked her lips, deliberate about it, and stared him down. What's wrong, Ciri? You look like you're about ready to reset the score to 0. We're not that far in. You'd only be losing, 2 points? His hand shot up, lightning fast, before she could react. He twisted his fingers into her hair, yanking her head to the side, before pressing his lips to her ear. If you want to taunt, then at least use Teldrin, he growled, low and dark. Or do you need to scream it before you remember? He let her go and settled back with an assessing look. I'm beginning to see a pattern too. Points mine. If you think I'll play nice, think again. The adrenaline settled quickly. The rest took longer. Back away while you can. You won't be winning this. Martha's voice, of course. Martha, who had held her through all the horrors. Dima, though, would have gotten the appeal. World's shit. Burned bright and fast. Pure shadows that way. Vera muffled her ghostly remainders. No holds barred, eh? 3. He inclined his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement. Fancy that. A draw. The sarcastic smirk was back, though not used as a shield this time. A reminder that they fenced with practiced blades. Dirty tricks, yes, but no blood drawn. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Above the cliffs, the sky was turning a delicate shade of rose. Should have enough light soon to go fishing for our stuff. That'll be your job. I'm not going in there anytime soon. Can you dry my armor? I'll see what I can do about scaring up some breakfast. She stretched her limbs, wincing at the crick in her neck. It was back with dividends. Hold still. The Dunmer rested his palm on her shoulder, then prodded around until he found the knotted muscle and pressed his thumb into it. Stretch your neck too. No, the other way. There. He added a small pulse of magic, similar to the healing magic Lovinar had used on her in the early days, but warmer somehow, and Vera groaned in relief as the constricted nerves released. You know, he trailed speculatively, I think I'll very much enjoy watching you lose. Vera lifted a shoulder in a shrug. The pain really was gone. Don't count your pigeons before they hatch. What is it with you and pigeons? That's a story for when, or rather if, you get to 100. Vera came across the nest of rock warbler eggs, 8 in total, a decent haul, hidden away in a crack about 500 paces from where they had made camp, if one could call it that. And, for lack of anything to carry them in, she lugged the whole thing back. Along the way, she found some canis root, piling it into the nest on top of the eggs, as well as a few plants of wild garlic and more river clams. Enough to make breakfast. She tried to ignore the singed smell from her armor, but the blissful warmth lingering from the Dunmer's drying spell somewhat made up for it. Her trousers were now riding low, courtesy of the ruined lacing. By some miracle of fortune, the demented Nord's amulet had survived Vera's near drowning. She found it in her pocket, along with the sticky mess of Ciro's leftover blunt. The rolly wasn't salvageable, of course. She'd have to ask him directly if she wanted to learn more about the intended effects of the mixture. That, or bum another smoke, which she wasn't particularly eager to do. Did he walk around the world in a permanent state of seeing purple lights, or was he using the stuff strategically? And if the glow was indeed induced by the smoking mixture, why had the effect been delayed the first time, but immediate on the second try? Questions. And considering their little arrangement, he'd probably make her trade for the answers. She slowed down once their landing spot came into view. Onar was awake, and not only awake, but splashing around in the river, apparently washing himself. He looked like a large, russet, frolicking bear, except more or less hairless, for a bear anyway. For a human, he was decidedly hercute. Butt naked, too. What the fuck? Not an injury in sight. A crisscrossing of old scars, yes. But the Nord had looked like a well-tenderized slab of venison when Cyril hauled him into the boat. And now, he was as hale as a Deller. Not that Vera had seen many Citadel denizens in her past life, but the 2 occasions when she had, It was like a different species, or like one of the unworshipped, she thought. The tingle of queasy horror prickling her spine, she cast her eyes around, looking for the other member of the dubious duo. She spotted the Dunmer sitting on a boulder at the edge of the water, also in a state of partial undress. No shirt, but pants on at least, shaving of all things. Unlike his employer, he still looked somewhat worse for wear, though his injuries had lessened. The swelling was gone. The bruise over his eye was now tinted yellow instead of the earlier purple-black. The after effects of the burns and the broken lip were still visible, but significantly less severe. Vera tried, and utterly failed, not to take an assessing, an entirely non-clinical glance at the rest of him. Fucking hell. Right. The fellow certainly wore his risky profession gracefully. To put it mildly, the sort of lean, sparse efficiency of someone who fought for a living, and did it well. The tracework of intricate tattoos over chiseled muscles, interrupted yet somehow augmented by the pale etchings of battle scars. The Dunmer, of course, caught her staring, red eyes crinkling in a smile that didn't quite make it all the way down to his lips. He flipped his blade between his fingers, a perfect, nonchalant twirl, and then he tilted his head back and resumed his shaving activities. 1 point, Vera translated. She stuck out her tongue at him, and immediately regretted it, since he followed up with a be my guest hand gesture, and then lifted another finger. 2 points, bastard. She turned away, looking for a campfire, and found none. Bastards, she amended, plopped down her haul and started setting up a circle of stones, leaving the Nord and the Merc to their grooming activities. She found her pack by a crumpled bedroll. Most of the knapsack's contents had been laid out to dry on the stones, alongside their other salvage. Shit. Her map was ruined. She had left spares at Bothela's at least, but until then, she'd have to go without. Her bow was propped against a boulder. It was intact, and the fear that had coiled in the pit of her stomach lifted, unclenching. Stupid to get attached to an object, even a weapon, and, perhaps, especially a weapon, all the more so when it had been a gift exchanged after other intimacies. You will survive by this, and I will go without. In her past world, no greater declaration of care existed, and no more certain goodbye. She had carried the sniper rifle too. Long after Dima was gone, Vera dismissed the pointless modeling and busied herself with stacking the fire. By the divines, is that tantalizing smell breakfast? Vera glanced up and quickly returned her attention to the eggs and clam omelet. Their travel skillet had survived too, apparently. So had all parts of the Nord's anatomy. Mind putting some pants on, Unnar? Oh, why, I suppose I should, but only out of respect for your delicate sensibilities, Snowberry. The Nord lumbered off in search of clothing and returned a few minutes later muttering unhappily about shrinkage, but in full armor. He plopped down by the campfire. I'm not used to standing on ceremony, see? He turned, craning his neck. Cyril, blight you. Stop pretending you can grow a proper beard and come have some of this fine meal. Vera got up, poured some Canis root tea into one of their rescued mugs, and walked over to the boulder Cyril was occupying. As I recall, you have a particular fondness for this beverage. The Dunmer leaned back and stared, a sardonic challenge on his features. How very considerate. Whatever did I do to deserve such thoughtful attention? Or did you simply come by to enjoy the view, Outlander? Vera pursed her lips, letting her eyes trail over him. Nice knife, Ciro. She waited him out. He raised an eyebrow, his eyes glinting with a keen curiosity at whatever her next move might involve. Looks good against your throat. He stilled for a moment, his strange pupils widening, and then he inclined his head, the hint of a smile quickly smothered. You're round. He absolutely purred it. I'll set your portion of eggs aside in case you'd rather eat later, Vera said under her breath, tallying up the point on automatic before handing him the tea. Beneath the quickly recovered sarcasm, something like surprised gratitude.
My, thanks.
She walked back briskly. After a few moments, the Dunmer trailed after, but, predictably, once at the campfire, he set his food on the ground at his feet, once Vera offered it and didn't touch it. He had donned his shirt, at least, and he settled down with his tea with an expression of grim forbearance. So less. Unnar managed through a huge mouthful of eggs, groaning appreciatively. His eyes, a tawny yellow in the morning sun, squinted with pleasure, like a cat's. Compared to the Dunmer's fading but still visible injuries, the Nord seemed almost obscenely unscathed. Smart and resourceful young woman that you are, you must have realized that I might not have been. He swallowed some tea, draining half of his mug in one gulp, despite the scalding temperature. Entirely forthcoming was my intentions regarding those forsworn in the particular piece of property I set out to acquire. Vera occupied herself with shoveling her share of the omelet into her mouth, declining to respond. Based on Ciro's offered commentary earlier, Unnar changing the terms was to be expected. How do you feel about making, say, an extra 200? No. Unnar stared in such comical befuddlement that Vera almost snorted. Instead, she swallowed the eggs and poured some tea into her salvaged wooden cup. Even Ciri looked up sharply. His eyes, the exact same shade as the rising sun's glare, narrowed in startlement. What do you mean, no? The Nord inquired, as if the meaning of that particular linguistic feature was entirely unknown to him. Vera fished around in her pocket, extracted the wedding amulet, and tossed it into the Nord's lap. No, as in we're done. She took a sip of tea. Her little breakfast-gathering expedition had afforded her the time to clear her head. A much-needed exercise. Sobering. She should have listened to her initial instincts. Unnar had been a walking disaster from the start. If antagonizing Vorstag and drawing Ouroboros' attention to her, and, by extension, to Bothala and Muri wasn't damaging enough, there was also the slippery way he spoke, his constant semantic adjustments, his insane ideas where the line between jest and coercion blurred. And whatever deal he had with Ciri, it wasn't good either. And then there was the problem of the Dunmer himself, bad enough that she could barely look at him without ogling. Funny how one's perception adjusted with familiarity. There was now that telltale little tightening in the pit of her stomach every time her peripheral vision caught his movements. Well, that, and the memory of his palm rubbing precariously intimate circles over her thigh, and his hand fisting in her hair, and his raspy purr in her ear like a constant maddening itch she couldn't reach. Not the end of the world in and of itself, nothing that her fingers couldn't take care of when she had some privacy, and the overdue for a lover thing was going to need addressing at some point regardless, preferably with someone useful, and, most importantly, reasonably safe. But the combination of intrigued and amorphously, irritably worried about whatever mess the Dunmer was in, now that was a dangerous mixture. Never start a game you can't win. She'd get the rest of the coins she was owed, and that was it. She'd talk to Bothala about that mysterious contact too, and see if the bribe could be lowered that way. And speaking of Bothala, next time the old woman found herself in the mood to dispense advice as to what not to do, Vera would keep her trap shut instead of blustering about how she would manage. Now, lass, let's not get hasty. Unnar turned on the affable bear charm and cranked it up to 100. Here, are you still hungry? Have some more eggs. More tea, yes? You have to excuse my manners. We haven't had the pleasure of traveling with the fairer sex in a while, Ciri and I. We're a bit rusty. Vera waved away the offered eggs. I don't give a shit about your manners, Unnar. I'll take you too to Karthwasten. It's close, and I'm headed that way regardless. From there, we should be able to hitch a ride back to Markarth, and once we're there, you'll pay me what you owe me. And then you can go wherever the fuck you're headed next, and our business will be concluded. The Nord's expression went momentarily flinty. before he smoothed it out to his usual jocular, amiable facade. Snowberry, he trailed, somewhere between conciliatory and hurt. Why am I sensing some hostility? He turned to Ciri. What did you do to the lass while I wasn't looking, Tildren? Fished her out of the river after you nearly capsized us. Aside from that, he shrugged. I told you, Ciri, no intimidating our new associate. I am going to have to reconsider how much. Leave him out of it, he didn't do anything wrong. Vera glared at the cup of tea in her lap, waiting for the sudden flare of anger to pass before speaking. Want to tell me how you two managed to escape the Forsworn, and with that sword? To boot, last night you looked like Skeeverhash Unnar. This morning you don't have a scratch. Ciri here still looks like he had sat around patiently while someone pummeled him with. She was about to say pipes, but caught herself. Wrong analogy. Well, you tell me. Wasn't a weapon, or he'd be dead. Unnar beamed. See, Tildren, I told you she was sharp. Now, you don't expect me to reveal all my secrets, do you, Snowberry? We haven't even shared mead yet, let alone gotten properly drunk together. How do I know I can trust you, He leaned forward, a sly, conspiratorial look on his features. Or is it the sorry state of my associate's face what has you fretting? He turned to the Dunmer. Hear that, sellsword? Your disreputable mug is pulling at our new partner's heartstrings, compassionate lass that she is. Maybe next time we'll trade places, eh? The Dunmer's expression remained inscrutable, save for a slight hitch to his lips. I doubt you would keep up, Nord, he drawled. Red eyes flicked to Vera, lingering on her a few seconds too long in open assessment. Ah, the things we do for the right price. The tea went down the wrong pipe, and Vera coughed spastically. Ciri lifted his drink in silent salute and tapped his ring finger against the side of the mug. 3 points. Jerk. All the more so because he knew perfectly well she couldn't retaliate. Woe and misery, what is an old warrior to do? Unnar wailed in a shoddy facsimile of unearthly torment. No beautiful Breton lass weeps over his broken countenance. No maidenly tears, limpid as dew, fall upon his brow in silent sorrow. Vera narrowed her eyes. Something about the diction, about the way he projected his voice, snagged on a memory. Her first night at the Silver Blood Inn, when she had any coin to spend, Ogmund had been declaiming something from the Poetic Edda. Had Unnar been trained as an actor or a bard? It seemed increasingly likely, and then it suddenly clicked, and Vera quickly averted her gaze, hiding her expression. No, not an actor, a con man. Was more like it. Cut it out. She collected herself, trying to keep the treble of anxiety out of her voice. It didn't help that she had no ground to accuse the Nord of duplicity. Technically, he had followed their arrangement to the letter. Bringing the Forsworn down upon them and almost getting her killed could easily be written off as unforeseen circumstances. Accidents happen. Surely we'll do better next time, etc. I see that I have taken the wrong approach. Something about Unnar shifted, resettling. His face, now devoid of his humorous mask, looked grave. There was an odd expression on him, like something that had fallen out of use. He is older than he appears, Vera thought suddenly. Can't say I blame you, lass. You can't buy trust with coin like a carrot from a vegetable peddler, eh? Very well. He puffed up before exhaling and tugged at his beard, momentarily lost in thought. Let me begin at the beginning then. And after that, should you wish to leave my service, I'll drop the matter, as the divines are my witnesses. He rolled his shoulders, settling into the new role, solemn and pensive. Once upon a time, there was a young man, but this tale, like most tales about young men, is not really about him. For if you wish to get to the heart of such fables, he brought his hand to his chest and tapped his fist against the worn scales of his armor. You must look for the woman. His diction shifted. The habits of casual speech dropped, his delivery rolling out deep and smooth, with the intonations of someone used to spellbinding crowds. A bard indeed, or perhaps a born bullshitter. The hero of our story, you must understand, was young and thereby foolish, and like many young fools, what he lacked in wisdom, he made up in hubris. And like thousands of fools before him, he found himself besotted with a maiden far above his station, as unreachable as the sun itself, and thrice as bright. For this maiden was no ordinary girl, and had our young lad followed his parents' advice, and settled for a comely merchant's daughter and fathered children with her, and led an unremarkable life of quiet contentment, he would have grown into a happy man indeed. But Unnar raised his finger and waved it for effect. This young lad was as foolish as he was proud, and no matter how many lovely lasses Mara, in her benevolence, saw fit to send down his path, doe-eyed and fresh and crisp as lavender, his heart remained as cold to them as stone. Some say it was Debella who guided his eye, for it was the Jarl's future wife that our young man lusted after. Unnar paused for effect, as well as to moisten his gullet with a sip of his tea. "Have I gotten your attention yet, Snowberry?" Vera cast a brief look at Ciri. Poker face. No help there. She exhaled, squished her nascent curiosity like a cockroach, and set her jaw. No. No? This time, the Nord didn't just sound surprised. He was veering towards outraged. "I'm sure it's a great story. Real tear-jerker. I suggest you save it for the tavern." Unnar stared at Vera for a few heartbeats in what could only be described as horrified amazement, and then he roared with laughter, scaring a nearby flock of pine thrushes into scattered flight. "Do you hear that, Teldrin? What sort of creature have we unearthed? As lithe and beguiling as a Spriggan, as resourceful as Zenithar himself, and as heartless as a Daedroth." "I suppose 2 of these descriptions are accurate enough," Ciri offered with studied indifference, but Vera caught his quick glance when the Nord occupied himself with inhaling the rest of the eggs, apparently to fortify himself against this unexpected turn of events. The Dunmer's expression was one part irritable amusement, one part something suspiciously close to grudging respect, and one part undisguised carnal interest. At least 2 of the 3 emotions, in Vera's estimation, hadn't been carefully rehearsed. "Look." Vera set her tea aside and interlaced her fingers in her lap. Keeping the Nord on the friendly side of the equation was wise, as long as he owed her money anyway. And so she swallowed back the harsher words rolling around on her tongue and forced a smile. "I am sure you have your reasons for doing what you do. Let me be straight with you as well. Whatever it is you're after, impressing the Jarl's wife into cuckolding her husband, or avenging her memory, or what have you, I'm sure there's going to be an adventurer out there somewhere ready and willing to lend a hand. That isn't me, though." She met his curious gaze. "You picked me for 3 reasons, as far as I can tell. First, you heard I was suited to the task. Second, you knew I needed the money. And third, most importantly, you knew that if I went missing, there'd be no serious repercussions. No family or social relations with enough coin to send hired goons after you to avenge my good name and so on. Why, I would never. I like you, Unnar, but I don't like your methods. You're cavalier and you're pushy. From what I can tell, your strategy involves flying by the seat of your pants. We simply don't match in our approach. Whatever it is you're after, I'm not your gal. Nothing personal." Now, both the Nord and the Dunmer were staring at her with matching expressions of suspicious amazement. Unnar recovered first. "Teldrin, I think I may be in love," he exclaimed with great and entirely fake pathos. "My condolences," Ciri chuckled, but his eyes never left Vera. She ignored his interrogative stare and looked back at the Nord. "For no love potion is greater than merciless rejection," Unnar amended, shaking an edifying finger. Well, you'll have to get over it. I'm with you until Markarth. Then you will pay my fee, and I'll wish you the best of luck. Unnair ruminated, his eyes aglow with speculation, and then another mask fell off, and all that remained was a keenly intelligent, calculating shrewdness. Not so fast, lass. As an aside, you are quite the find. Here's how it's going to be. He leaned forward. I made some inquiries about you. Due diligence, you know how that goes. Rumor has it you've been hounding that Altmer conjurer. What's his name? Count Chelmo, was it? Well. He stretched and cast a forlorn look at the empty skillet, and then he plucked a head of garlic, peeled it with alarming efficiency, and started popping the cloves into his mouth, one after the other, crunching through them with visible relish. Vera stared in horror. Ciro prudently relocated further away, and quickly dug into his eggs, before the insatiable Nord appropriated those too. See, Snowberry, I am what one might call a bit of a collector. Widely known in narrow circles and all that. About 3 months ago, I received a letter from a fellow out of Markarth named Calcelmo, looking for a certain dwarven artifact, which just so happens to be in my ownership. Bit of a collector himself, I'm given to understand. Now, as a collector, I can tell you that parting with a prized possession isn't something that we, collectors, are eager to do, but for the right reasons. Say, to help a friend in need get an in with a reputedly difficult and ill-tempered mage. You're a smart lass, Snowberry. You see where this is going, don't you? Oh, but she was in so much shit, because now she had no doubt that as soon as she brushed aside the offered carrot, the stick would loom into view. Suddenly, her little game with the Dunmer acquired a whole new set of stakes. What's on the other side of the coin, Undar? Suspicious creature, aren't you? Realistic. He smiled his chipped grin, nodded at her question, and leaned forward. Let me tell you a little secret, Snowberry, since we're all becoming fast friends, yes? I am what we might call a real traditional Nord. See, the other side of the coin is that you have been consorting with what is otherwise known as a devoted follower of mighty Talos. I wonder if our Thalmor friend might find that information interesting. He crunched through the last of the garlic, and before you get any ideas about anonymously drafted reports, the difference is that I have the means to leverage myself out of Oblivion itself, should the need arise. But you... He motioned with his hands and arranged his face into an approximation of commiseration. As you said, no family and no social relations. Vera glanced at the Dunmer. He was carefully avoiding her gaze, staring intently into the fire, his expression grim. Why the long face, Snowberry? Don't you worry one bit. As Talos is my witness, I never betray my friends. As long as they stay my friends, that is. No, I think this little arrangement will benefit all of us. I'll help you with the Dwemer-obsessed mage and line your pockets with more gold than you can throw away on that struggling little apothecary where you've been hiding. Everyone wins. As long as I dance to your tune, Vera clarified, the icy crawl of terror slowly curdling into cold rage. She kept her face neutral and her voice steady. Now, did you have to be so crass about it? He squinted, the jovial jester expression firmly back on. Wait, do you dance too? He turned to Sero. Hear that, sellsword? She really is a treasure. Never could pass one up for as long as I've known you, yes, the Dunmer commented acerbically and got up. Now that this is over with, what's our next move?